I think it's fair to say that us West Ham fans, we get used to the fact that we get linked with so many players when it comes to transfer window time, whether it be summer or in January. I don't think it's down to the fact that accounts necessarily just sort of throw everything they can and see what sticks. I think actually the fact is West Ham tend to look at so many options before we make a sort of definitive decision exactly who we're going to go for. We do a lot of scouting, so we tend to get linked with a lot of players, which kind of makes what I'm doing, and we do it the West Ham way, etc., quite frustrating at times, because you just got so many players you've got to keep looking into, and you don't really know. It's not very clear exactly who the targets are going to be. You're linked to, say, like with strikers, for instance. We're sort of linked with 7 or 8 strikers. We're talking to 7 or 8 strikers. We're very keen on 7 or 8. So you never, but realistically, you know, only we're going to get one if we get them out of that 7 or 8. So it's really difficult at times to sort of have a definitive, that's the player we're going for, especially early on, I think, in the transfer window. However, there is though a turning point. I feel there's that moment in the window where it starts shaping up, where it's really clear that's likely to be our player, and I think we're getting that now. I think we're starting to get that, certainly with one player in particular, and I'm referring to Max Kilman of Wolves. This is coming from ExWHUEemployee, so he's given an update on his usual transfer update. He does this on Patreon. If you're not a Patreon member, there's a link below. Just go and check it out. £5 a month. You can't go wrong. And you get the updates from X Direct on terms of everything, really, what's going on at the club, but particularly this time of year, transfers, who are interested in. Max Kilman, we've been reporting on for a long time. West Ham have held a real strong interest in this player for quite a while now. And that's further intensified, isn't it, with a few things. One of the main things being that the former Wolves head coach, Julian Lopetegui, is now our head coach and highly rates him. And also, there's the added feeling that, it's a fact, that West Ham want to change captain. Kurt Zouma no longer is going to be West Ham's captain next season, and they see Max Kilman as the ideal replacement. That's who the head coach wants as his captain for his side. We know that now as a fact. And as far as I understand it at the moment, for what we're seeing, is that he is a key target. West Ham want to get this deal done. Now, ExWHUEemployee has provided an update on the Kilman situation. It all but confirms for me that this is how I feel. All right, I think that Kilman will come to West Ham this summer. I'm sure. Oh my God, sure. I'm very, very confident that I think that something will happen eventually. I think there will be a compromise between the two parties, i.e. Wolves and West Ham. You'll know that in the press, or you may not know, but it is saying in the press, it's quite. It's everywhere, really, that the talks are stalled, that West Ham have put 2 bids in, possibly even 3, I think now, bids in that have been rejected by Wolves. There's a gap in valuation. West Ham are now looking at other targets. This has happened quite a few times before. We see this quite often in transfer windows for us, for certain players that we go for, that we put a bid in, it gets rejected. West Ham then give up effectively. No, we're turning our attention elsewhere. We're looking at other options. I'm sure West Ham are looking at other options. I'm not denying that, because that would be stupid not to. Do you know what I mean? If it's not going to, nothing's guaranteed. We're not guaranteed to get Kilman, but I do feel like it will happen. As far as we understand it, Max Kilman himself wants the move. West Ham, of course, want the move, and I think that Wolves have set their price. They want £45 million for the player, and West Ham are reluctant to pay that at the moment. And you got to understand as well, as from both clubs' point of view, then they're going to use the line, well, we're in no hurry, it doesn't matter. But the reality is we are in a hurry, and so are Wolves. Wolves will want their money in because they want to go and do their own business. And that's not just necessarily cash in so they can go and spend it quick. It's more about for the books. We've sold this player. We can now then comfortably go out and go and spend some more money. And we know for a fact, from Gary O'Neill has said in his press conference, of course, the Wolves manager, former West Ham player, is that Wolves have got financial issues. They need to sell players to do business this summer. So Wolves are under pressure. So they might play the card of, yeah, no big rush. But I think both parties want to get this done. And we know the player does too. So this is the update from X on the Kilman situation. He said, now this stalling is something that we have seen happen many times in the past before with main transfer targets. And he's correct here, because if you remember, we had the exact same situation last season with James Ward-Prowse, where West Ham put a bid in, Southampton rejected it, we were miles apart, and West Ham are going to look elsewhere. And then all of a sudden the deal happened. So he said James Ward-Prowse was one of David Moyes' main targets last summer, and it happened, the exact same happened with him. It also occurred with Scamacca and also Kurt Zouma. At the moment, we're about 10 to 15 million pounds apart from Wolves' valuation of the player. So West Ham have tabled around about 30, 35 million pounds. Lopetegui has made it very clear that he wants to sign the player, potentially as his new captain. And this is from X's words, I do not believe that this is over. We've also tried to offer a player exchange to Wolves. It was thought that it would be both Cornet and Ings, although shifting Ings is going to be hard because of his wages. I don't want to moan about it, right? But what a catastrophic move that was from West Ham. And that we know that made that move. I'm not going to sit and make it very, from the hierarchy, West Ham decided to go for Ings. Putting that player on that ridiculous wage is really costly, really frustrating that we did that. He was also offered to Southampton, Danny Ings, this was. I believe this is X. I believe we're going to go back in for another offer for Koeman. Whilst I can't guarantee this, it's a hunch, I think he will eventually sign. ExWHUEmployee, right? I've worked with him now for a few years. He's very careful of the words that he uses in these updates. Really careful. I have to, when I do the writing for the site, I have to run it by him, especially when it comes to sort of this sort of news, transfer news. And if I make any kind of lean towards something's likely to happen and he's not sure, he will pick up on it very quickly and tell me not to put it, because he doesn't want to ever mislead or ever suggest that there's a confidence level to get it done. So for X to come out and say this, it gives confidence that hence why I've got a belief in myself that, as I said, there's no guarantee. There's absolutely no guarantees, but I do feel this is a deal that will eventually happen. And as far as we understand it as well for next week, like the coming week now, it's a big week for, in terms of transfers. Things are going to start moving forward, especially on the striker front. So we're going to come up with some news on that a bit later this week. But I think West Ham is sort of narrowing down now the players they want. Jonathan David, of course, is a key target, as is En-Nesyri of Sevilla. So it'd be interesting to see what we do there. So, yeah, it looks as though at this stage, in terms of Max Kilman, that something's going to happen. Wolves are going to have to come compromise as are West Ham. That is the nature of negotiation, isn't it? West Ham aren't going to come across desperate, as are Wolves. So, but I think talks are going to happen, and the player does want the move. So I think it's a case now. Watch this space. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, this week we'll get some positive news on that. I want to also talk about a couple of other players, particularly from Hull City. Two of them. We've already talked about Jacob Greaves, the defender. Now West Ham, very, very keen on him. We're looking to rebuild our defence, and rightly bloody so. I mean, let's be honest, it was absolutely abysmal last season, and the amount of goals we conceded was shocking. It's something that needs addressing. Naif Agurdi is going to be sold. We're very confident that's going to happen. I think it's Monaco at the moment, and possibly even Marseille. I think they're quite keen on him. So something should be happening there. I think Kurt Zouma is up for sale. There's talk that he isn't actually overly keen to move on. I think the issue is his wages. Again, another player on very high wages. We're going to struggle to shift, but I think West Ham will do whatever they can to do so. Saudi Arabia will probably be the most attractive move for us as a club, because we can get some more money in a bit quicker and get a bit deal done. So let's hoping we can get that done. But a new look defence for West Ham. So we're looking at Jacob Greaves. This is from ExWHUEmployee, and we're going to come on to another Hull City player in a minute in Jaden Philogene. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right. Jacob Greaves is the other choice who can offer versatility in defence. He plays for Hull City and someone we have watched for a very long time. So I'm not sure on the Greaves one. I think there's a little bit of hesitation there. I'm not. I get the feeling that West Ham are going to look at options there. Furthermore, I think Kilman is kind of like a dead cert. I think for a club, I think they really want. When I say dead cert, I'm not going to get him in, but dead cert in that's the player we want. I think with Greaves, they're not sure. I think they're looking at other options as well. But Greaves is they are considering it. As far as we understand with the Greaves situation, is that West Ham are going to make their feelings known to Hull City for how they value the player, how much they believe he's worth. So that should be happening this week. So if something's going to happen with him now, the interesting thing with Greaves is that he really wants to move to West Ham. Of course, it'd be a big step up for him. We've seen it obviously happen with Jared Bowen come from Hull City, and look how well he's done. I'm sure that they've probably known each other, haven't they? I'm assuming so. I might be wrong here. But that's obviously a connection there, isn't it? And they might be saying, well, look, Bowen's now playing for England at the Euros. This could be my step into that world. So something could happen with Greaves, but I do believe that West Ham are considering options, and they're going to then come back with their evaluation of the player. Jaden Philogene. Now, this is a player that I think excites a lot of fans. I'm one of them. I really like the look of this player. I've seen quite a fair bit of him actually in recent weeks because of our link to him. Again, when speaking to X, and this is kind of a bit of a private conversation, but speaking to X, this is one that kind of indicated to me that there was something here, that West Ham really, really like this player. Again, I think there's a feeling that the player wants to move and everything could happen here. So we're in a strong position here. And I do think, actually, this is one West Ham are going to now push for. And I think we're going to see some movement of it in the coming days. So this is from ExWHUEmployee. As previously mentioned, we also like Jadon Philogene, and we will talk about other wingers targets later on in the show. This is obviously from his update on the show. The club have already begun talks with Hull City regarding the winger. So as far as we understand it with him, then we believe that I think talks are underway. They've been underway for a little while, actually. I think longer than people realise. This is one now that's sort of hitting the press. I think it's the mainstream media picking up on this now, realising there's something really in this. I've got a fair bit of confidence, actually, in Philogene move. I think West Ham will actually get the player. Again, I think having the fact that, I don't know, people say, well, it's irrelevant. I think someone messaged me the other day on that and said that I don't see what the connection is. I think it is a connection, actually. I think having Jarrod Bowen at West Ham, not necessarily because he knows the players who can help them get them through, but I just think you've done the business with Hull City before, which obviously they were good to work with. I've just got to say, Hull City, I don't know if you saw their tweet when Jarrod Bowen got the call up to the Euros. They put up a really lovely tweet of him in his Hull City kit and saying congratulations to him. They just come across quite classy, Hull. I like what they did with that, and I was quite pleased. And I like the fact West Ham have got that connection with them now, done business with them, and obviously we're now talking about a couple of their players. And I've got a feeling that I actually think that Philogene is more likely than Greaves at this stage. That's my gut feeling. So I imagine that West Ham's something's going to happen very soon with that. Now, talks have been ongoing for a little while with him between the clubs, and they're now just trying to negotiate a fee. So I think watch this space. I think now we are starting to see a couple of, I would say, two clear targets. You know that from the thumbnail of what this video is about. Max Kilman of Wolves, Jadon Philogene of Hull City, I believe, are now two very, very key targets for this club. And I do believe, from what I understand, this week is going to be a big week, quite pivotal in West Ham pursuing those players.